staying with the education theme, now that the matriculants have received their grade 12 results, this marks the end of the high school career and the beginning of a tertiary education journey. While some head to universities, universities of technology, TVET and independent colleges, some have to make alternative plans. But to help us broaden these options for our first-year higher education students, we are now joined by Dr. Laura Fisher, an education expert with Boston City Campus. Doctor, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Given the overall pass rates, especially of a cohort that battled a lot of COVID-19 limitations, what was your analysis of the results of the 2023 class of matriculants?
Well, I just want to really put my hands together to say a very, very big well done to the teachers, to the students and to their parents or guardians for getting them this far along their journey. I think it has been challenging, as the previous speaker mentioned. It's been a particularly challenging academic time for the cohort that has just matriculated. And I think that they have, despite all the odds, just shown us how resilient South African learners actually are in the face of many challenges that the South African education system poses.
Most certainly. So, Doc, many of them will be heading to universities, some to TVET colleges, and many others would either not have any space to enter some of those colleges, or their marks won't allow them to be able to get into such institutions. Do you think there's a disservice with the 30% pass mark, especially for those students that would be left in limbo?
Yeah, the issue of the 30% pass mark is definitely one that is a contentious issue. I think particularly once those students who may be passed with very low scores go into the higher education system, the problem really comes to bite them later on downstream, and then the higher education system has to pick them up, because what's expected of them at a tertiary educational level compared to what's expected of them at a high school level are quite different. And what we see is that there's a large dropout rate, particularly amongst first-year students, whether they've gone into TVET or whether they're going into a one-year program or even into their degrees. There's this high dropout rate, and one has to kind of ask the question whether this 30% pass mark doesn't have some kind of influence on the student's ability to actually cope within the higher educational system.
That's a very concerning matter, especially for those that are able to get into the universities but can't further their studies because they're not prepared enough. Are we then even preparing our students for future work if they're not prepared enough just for first year of university?
Yeah, I mean, the question of are we adequately preparing our students, I think, you know, it's a very real question, and there's a lot of anxiety around, you know, whether these students are able to cope in higher education and into the workplace with such low-level marks, and then also facing an employment market that is very severe. And, you know, there's a high levels of unemployment. So I think that there is a sense that I have that perhaps we aren't doing everything that we can do. But we also have to be realistic with the psychosocial and political situation that we find ourselves within, and say within these constraints, what are the students' mobility as they move from high school into tertiary education or into a career, and is there perhaps something that they may have learned along the way by simply having to face the challenges that they've faced through their schooling career that maybe we overlook? You know, the South African education system has unique challenges, and those unique challenges actually shape students in ways that foster the development of a number of key skills that maybe in other systems where things are slightly easier, our students are actually stronger. You know, they're resilient, they're adaptable, they've got high levels of self-reliance and initiative. There's empathy, there's multilingualism, there's critical thinking. You know, all of these things play to their favor because of the obstacles they've had to overcome. But obviously, we also do need to really, I think that there's a consensus that there's a recalibration needed in terms of the evolving educational landscape and how we are preparing students going forward.
So, Doc, for those students that then wouldn't be applying to any institution of higher education, what career alternatives are there for them that don't require them to be in a traditional institution of higher learning?
Yeah, so, I mean, there are definitely plenty of options, and I think that students shouldn't feel that if they haven't achieved the result that they wanted to achieve, or if they have just scraped their national senior certificate, that their kind of life is over. I mean, really, I want to reiterate that, you know, your identity is not formed based on the mark that you've received leaving school. So the alternative pathways, obviously, if you don't have a matric or if you haven't obtained a national senior certificate that meets the basic requirements for getting into higher education, is number one, you can look at bridging courses, which will really help to prepare you for the higher education space better. Number two, you can actually look at perhaps repeating some of your matric subjects where you didn't score as well as you would have liked to score. And then number three, I think that there's more and more acknowledgement within the higher ed space that because we need to address issues of equity, access and redress, that actually our higher educational systems are actually quite well positioned in terms of offering, for example, a 1-year higher certificate in the field of interest that the student has. And then from there, you've already now entered into the higher ed space and can then progress through a diploma and a degree, even onto an honours, a master's and a PhD, should you so wish. So there's certain, there's certain courses where you are going to have certain requirements ticked. But there is actually a lot more latitude than maybe the general population is aware of for still pursuing the dreams that you have. Also, looking at internship opportunities, using the opportunity to think and rethink about what you want for your future, what your matric report has shown you in terms of your strengths and your limitations, and sort of building a sense of where do I want to go as I move forward in my life. Life's a journey, and your matric results are not the end of that journey.
Lastly, Doc, if we're looking at matriculants that are currently now studying in 2024, what advice would you have for them so as they don't find themselves in a situation that at the end of their matric year, they could be in limbo, not knowing what to do in terms of their career paths?
I think that it's really important to get career advice. And I think that, for example, at Boston, where I work, we have admissions officers who go through what the requirements are for the various courses you would want to take and give you some guidance and advice. You can speak to teachers, you can speak to your allo teachers or other mentors that you have in your life to begin to create and envisage where you want to end up. And then really to apply your mind and to apply your time and energy into the areas and the subjects where you really feel you ultimately want to excel or that you'd want to grow on and expand on going forward. I think it would be remiss of me to not also mention that it is critical that students moving into matric this year really engage with the impact that AI technologies are having. And, there's a soft skill component that is necessary to move into an AI-driven world, and there's also a hard skill that's necessary to move into an AI-driven world. So, subjects like business studies, economics, accounting, science, coding, those are really important. But if you're not really drawn to those, then the soft skill areas and competencies are also something that you should really be nurturing. So I would say to the matric class of this year, this coming up year of 2024, just to see the year as one to be embraced wholeheartedly and to not give up on really taking the time out to dream big dreams for your life and then to get others to come alongside you in helping you to achieve what it is you want for your life.
All right, Dr. Fisher, thank you so much for your time.